The Force is light and full of shadows.
Before we dive in, check the link in the description if you want exclusive Timelines members-only videos you won't find on YouTube, all on our Patreon. The Chancellor's office smells of ozone and old blood. Anakin stands 3 meters from the man who raised him, blade ignited, the blue light of his saber cutting across Palpatine's face in cold, flat stripes. Behind him, Mace Windu is down, driven back against the rain-slicked ledge. His blade gone, breathing, but not rising. The fight taken out of him by the full measure of what Palpatine is. The window is gone, just open sky now. Coruscant's eternal city light bleeding into the room like a wound that won't close. Palpatine watches him with those ruined eyes. Yellow, ancient, patient as stone. "I know what you're feeling, Anakin," he said. His voice had dropped an octave, the warm senatorial tenor replaced by something older and far more deliberate. "Only together can we unlock the mystery of life. Only together can we save her." Anakin's grip on the saber tightens. He thinks of Pad Diem. The blade hangs in the air between them, centimeters from the old man's throat. One motion. A single committed step. It would be over before the guard outside the door could key the lock. He thinks of Padme. And then he thinks of something else. Dooku's head in his hands. The clean, practiced ease of 2 blades through a neck, and Palpatine's voice behind him. "Good. Anakin, good. Not horrified. Not reluctant. Coaching. As if he'd watched a student successfully complete a lesson he'd been waiting years to teach. The memory arrives without warning, and lands like a fist. Dooku was his apprentice. He wanted his own apprentice dead. The blade doesn't lower. Not yet. But something in Anakin's chest goes very, very quiet. His mind doesn't panic. It never panics. That's the part people always misread about him. He doesn't collapse under pressure. He compresses. Every year of war, every split-second decision on the edge of a burning ship, every engagement that should have killed him and didn't, they all trained the same reflex. When the situation becomes impossible, he stops reacting and starts reading. He reads now. Dooku, dead by design. An apprentice removed to make room for a better one. The war. He sees the war from above suddenly. The whole terrible architecture of it. The separatist leadership funded from the shadows of the Republic. The banking clans playing both sides. The Senate too fractured to move, and too proud to ask why. 20 million dead in 3 years, and not one decisive engagement. Not one. Because a decisive engagement would have ended it. And ending it was never the point. The war was a machine, built to run, built to consume. Both sides controlled, his mind says flatly. Both sides his. And then, quiet, almost gentle, the way the worst realizations always arrive. 5s. Anakin stops breathing. 5s on Coruscant, 6 months ago. 5s cornered and frantic and already shot, grabbing Anakin's arm with a grip like a man drowning, trying to say something that kept breaking apart before it could form. The nightmares, the mission, the chip, he'd buried that. Let the Republic bury it. Let Nala Se's clinical dismissal and Palpatine's soothing, reasonable concern smooth the whole thing over like Durasteel over a crack in a hull. It was never a malfunction. It was never a lie. It was you, all along. It was always you. The office breathes around him. Emergency lighting. The distant sound of Coruscant traffic moving through the open wound of the window. Palpatine's yellow eyes, studying him the way a surgeon studies a patient who doesn't yet know what the diagnosis is. He doesn't know. He thinks he's already won. Anakin sees the full structure of it in that instant. All of it snapping into alignment the way a targeting solution resolves when you stop fighting the math and let the numbers find each other. Order 66 is not a blaster bolt. It is not an army at the door. It is already inside his brothers, inside Rex, inside Cody, inside every man who has ever followed him into fire and called him general, and meant it. It is sitting there, dormant, waiting for one old man's voice to give it permission. If Anakin strikes now, Palpatine dies with the trigger still armed. Some subordinate sends the signal. Some contingency fires automatically. 10,000 Jedi across the galaxy die before his body hits the floor, and Anakin stands alone in this office having saved no one. Not Padme, not his brothers. Not the Order having only proven, in the end, that he was exactly the blunt instrument everyone always quietly feared he was. He lowers the blade. The motion is slow and deliberate, the way you lower a weapon when you want someone to see you do it, when you want them to believe it means something. Palpatine's expression shifts, relief carefully dressed as compassion, satisfaction wearing the mask of mercy. He reaches out one gnarled hand. "I knew you would understand," he said softly. "I'm trying," Anakin replied. His voice comes out exactly right, broken at the edges. Grieving, conflicted in all the ways a young man who has just watched his mentor reveal a second face should be conflicted. 2 decades of watching actors perform loyalty had apparently taught him something. He extinguishes the blade. Palpatine is already speaking. Something about the Jedi Council's corruption, about Anakin's unique position, about the work ahead, and Anakin listens to none of it. He nods in the right places. His eyes stay soft and lost. His hands at his sides are completely still. He is cataloging. He is counting. He is building a list in the part of his mind that Palpatine can't see. The chip verification protocol. GAR command frequencies. The Coruscant relay spires. Rex. I need Rex first. Then, access to the mainframe. I have maybe 6 hours before he expects an answer, and starts wondering why I haven't delivered one. 6 hours to cut the wire. "I need time, Chancellor," he said. "Please." Another nod from Palpatine. Another studied expression of patience. "Of course, my boy. Of course." He crosses the office. The door opens. He doesn't look back. The hallway outside the Chancellor's suite is empty. Midnight dark, the security detail rerouted for the duel that just ended. Anakin walks 20 meters before he stops. He stands with his back against the corridor wall. Eyes forward. Perfectly still. Something moves through his face in the dark. Something that has no name in any diplomatic vocabulary. Something that belongs entirely to men who have been in enough battles to know the exact moment a losing engagement becomes a winnable one. It is not hope. It is colder than hope. More precise. Fives died with the truth in his hands, and nobody listened. Anakin is listening now. His jaw sets, his shoulders square. The grief is still there, it will always be there. The specific grief of understanding too late. But it has been moved. Filed, put somewhere it won't interfere with the next 6 hours. He pushes off the wall and walks, and his stride has nothing left of the confused young man who just left the Chancellor's office. The chosen one is going to war. Not with a saber. Not yet. The 501st Barracks. Level 1313, Coruscant Undercity adjacent. 0200 hours. The corridors down here don't get the polished Senate district lighting. Bare conduit runs along the ceiling, buzzing faintly with the kind of electrical inefficiency that maintenance logs forever, and fixes never. The air carries the smell of weapon solvent and recycled oxygen, and the specific, institutional warmth of 300 bodies sleeping in close quarters. Anakin doesn't slow down. He moves through the outer checkpoint at a pace that makes the gate trooper scramble to key the lock before the general walks through it. The trooper gets it open with half a second to spare. Anakin doesn't acknowledge him. His mind is already inside, already moving through the floor plan, already counting doors. Rex's quarters. End of the senior officer corridor. Third door. He knocks twice, then opens it without waiting. Rex is already awake. He sits on the edge of his bunk in fatigues, elbows on knees, a datapad dark in one hand. The kind of awake that suggests he never fully slept. His eyes find Anakin in the doorway, and something in them tightens immediately. The precise, experienced recognition of a soldier reading his general's body language and not liking what he finds there. "Sir," he said. "Get up," Anakin replied. Soundproofed room. Now, Rex doesn't ask questions. That's always been the thing about him. The briefing room 3 doors down is a 6x4-meter box used for classified operational planning, walls rated for signal containment. Anakin engages the lock, the scrambler panel beside the door, and the secondary scrambler he pulls from inside his robe. He sets it on the table between them and activates it without explaining why. Rex watches all of this. His face is a controlled thing, the product of 15 years of training himself not to show what he's processing until he understands it fully. But his eyes move. He is reading the room. Reading Anakin. "How bad?" he asked. Anakin pulls out a chair and sits across from him. He puts both hands flat on the table. "I need you to listen to everything before you respond," he said. "All of it." "Can you do that?" "Always have." Anakin holds his gaze for a moment. Then he begins. He doesn't soften it. There is no architecture of careful disclosure, no diplomatic sequencing of revelations designed to ease the blow. Rex has never wanted to be managed, and Anakin has never managed him. That's the precise thing that makes them work. He lays it down the way you lay down a weapon, completely, and all at once. Palpatine is Darth Sidious. The Clone Wars were engineered from their first engagement. Both the Republic and the Separatists have been moving pieces on a board owned by one man, who sits in the Senate building 6 kilometers from where they are standing, and believes, right now, that he has won. He hasn't finished the sentence before he sees Rex's face change. Not disbelief. That's what he'd prepared for. The measured, reasonable resistance of a man being asked to reframe everything he's ever known. But Rex doesn't look like a man rejecting new information. He looks like a man who has just been handed the name for something he already knew the shape of. "Tup," Rex said. The word comes out quiet, flat, the way you say a name when you've been carrying it somewhere private for a long time. "Yes," Anakin said. "And 5s. "Yes," Rex looks at the table. Something moves behind his eyes, not grief, not yet. Something older than grief. The specific weight of a retroactive understanding that rewrites a year of smaller wrongnesses into a single coherent picture. Every small anomaly that never quite added up. Every official explanation that had just enough plausibility to make questioning it feel like ingratitude. "I knew something was wrong with the investigation," Rex said. His voice stays level, but his jaw is working. "Nala Se's report didn't match the timeline. I went back over it 3 times. Command kept telling me I was misreading the data. You weren't misreading anything. 5s wasn't a traitor." "No." Rex's hands close on the table edge. "He died trying to tell you. He died trying to tell me," Anakin said. "And I let them bury it. The silence between them is the kind that has weight." Anakin doesn't try to fill it. He lets Rex carry it for the full measure of what it costs. Because Rex deserves that. The unabbreviated truth of what was done and what it means. Then, Rex lifts his head. "The chip," he said. "You mentioned a chip." Anakin reaches into his kit and produces the medical scanner. It's a field unit, compact, blunt-purposed, designed for battlefield triage rather than surgical precision, but sensitive enough for what he needs. He sets it on the table. "I need to show you something," he said, "and I need you to be ready for what it looks like." Rex looks at the scanner, looks at Anakin, nods once. Anakin stands, moves around the table and runs the scanner along the base of Rex's skull, just above the hairline at the back of the neck. The unit hums. The readout populates in green light across the small display, there, 11 millimeters beneath the surface of the bone. A structure that has no business being in a human brain, compact, precise, foreign in its architecture. It sits against the hypothalamic tissue like a splinter that has learned to be invisible. Anakin turns the scanner so Rex can see. Rex stares at the readout for a long time. "That's in my head," he said. "Yes. Right now. Right now." He doesn't panic. Anakin watches him closely for it. The spike, the fracture point, the moment the information becomes too intimate and the soldier gives way to the man underneath. But Rex just looks at the display with a stillness that is not calm, exactly, but is something harder than calm. The stillness of a person deciding in real time what they are going to do with an unbearable fact. Does it? He stops. Starts again. When it activates. Will I know? Anakin holds his gaze. No. Rex absorbs this. The hum of the scrambler fills the room. How many of us? He asked. Every clone in the GAR. Rex closes his eyes. Just for a moment. When he opens them, the decision is already made. Anakin can see it. The way you can always see the exact instant a good soldier finds the line between what he's feeling and what he's going to do about it. "Tell me the plan," Rex said. Anakin leans forward. The chip doesn't fire on its own. It waits for an authorization signal, a cryptographic broadcast from a GAR command frequency. Without a verified signal, the chip has a built-in failsafe. It ignores unverified commands. He pauses. "I'm going to poison the verification key. Galaxy-wide. Every relay, every hub, every backup frequency. When Palpatine broadcasts Order 66, every chip in the GAR will read the signal as corrupted and reject it." Rex is quiet for a moment, working through it. "You're turning the system's own safeguard against him. He built it to resist enemy tampering. I'm going to make him the enemy." "Where's the master relay?" "Republic Military Command. Sub-level data core. I need your clearance codes, your biometric signature, and 3 of your best men who can pass a command-tier security check without raising a flag." Anakin meets his eyes. "And I need all of it in the next 6 hours, before he starts wondering why I haven't come back." Rex processes this with the methodical speed of a man who has planned extraction operations under fire. Apo, Kix, and Jesse. Apo has command clearance. Kix knows the medical architecture better than anyone. If the chip has a secondary biological trigger, he'll catch it. Jesse is the fastest slicer in the battalion. Get them up. Rex stands. He's already moving, already shifting into the register that Anakin has watched him inhabit for 3 years. The focused, forward-facing efficiency of a captain who has accepted the parameters of the mission and is building the solution inside his head in real time. He stops at the door. Anakin. It's the first time he's used his name. Not his rank. His name. Anakin looks up. "Fives was right," Rex said. "He was right about all of it, and they killed him for it, and I want you to know." He stops. "Steadies, I want you to know that what we're doing tonight, we're doing for him too." Anakin holds his gaze. "I know," he said. "That's why it has to work." Rex opens the door. The corridor is dark and quiet and full of sleeping men who don't yet know what's sitting inside their skulls. He moves into it without looking back. Republic Military Command, Sub-Level Data Core. 0317 hours. The building doesn't sleep. That's the first problem. Command infrastructure runs on a 24-hour operational cycle, shift rotations staggered, security sweeps on a 40-minute interval, monitoring stations manned by officers who have spent enough years in uniform to recognize when something feels wrong, even if they can't articulate why. The sublevels are quieter than the floors above, but quieter is not empty, and empty is the only condition that would make this simple. It is not simple. Anakin moves through the level B2 corridor with Rex 2 steps behind him and Apo, Kix, and Jesse fanned out in a loose, practiced formation that looks, to any casual observer, exactly like a general conducting an unscheduled security inspection. Because that is what it is. Officially, the paperwork exists. Rex generated it in 12 minutes using a command authorization template and Apo's clearance codes. It will survive a surface-level query. It will not survive anyone making a direct call to verify with senior command, which means the window between entry and discovery is exactly as long as it takes someone to decide the paperwork looks unusual enough to escalate. Anakin intends to be finished long before that decision gets made. "Checkpoint ahead," Apo said quietly, his voice barely above the hum of the ventilation system. 2 guards. Standard post. They'll want biometric and command authorization both. Give them both, Anakin said. Smoothly, Apo moves to the front. He is a broad, unhurried presence, the kind of soldier who reads as entirely unremarkable until you need him to be otherwise. He approaches the checkpoint with the relaxed confidence of a man who belongs in every room he enters. And the 2 guards respond to it exactly the way soldiers respond to an officer who radiates certainty. They process the credentials, they scan the authorization, and they step aside. The door to the data core opens. The room beyond is not what the name suggests. Data core implies something cold and architectural. Server towers, clean lines, the aesthetic of organized information. What it actually is a low-ceilinged maintenance level dominated by a central relay hub the size of a small shuttle, its surface alive with blinking status indicators and the soft, constant chatter of active data transmission. The GAR's command frequencies run through this hub. Every order, every field report, every medical telemetry packet from every clone unit in the mid-rim passes through this room on its way somewhere else. It is, in the most literal possible sense, the nervous system of the Grand Army of the Republic. It is also, Anakin notes, staffed by exactly one technician at this hour, a young lieutenant sitting with her back to the door, headset on. Attention divided between 3 active screens. Kix steps forward before Anakin can speak. He crosses to the technician with his medkit visible and his manner entirely matter-of-fact. Lieutenant, Medical Systems Audit, commissioned by the Surgeon General's office. We need access to the biotelemetry relay partition for approximately 40 minutes. You don't need to move. We'll work around your active station. The lieutenant pulls one side of her headset off and looks up at him with the exhausted expression of someone 8 hours into a 12-hour shift. She looks at the medkit. She looks at the rest of them, a general, a captain, 2 troopers, and makes the calculation that a group this official-looking, this calm, and this specific about what they need is almost certainly not a problem for her to solve. Partition 3 is the telemetry hub, she said. Panels on the east wall. Don't touch the active frequency banks without logging it. Understood, Kix said pleasantly. She puts her headset back on. Anakin moves to the east wall. The panel is a meter-wide interface board. Its surface a dense grid of manual access ports and frequency management controls that haven't been updated since the early years of the war. This is the advantage of old infrastructure. It was designed for direct access by credentialed technicians, not for an era in which someone might want to prevent exactly the kind of intrusion Anakin is about to commit. Jesse sets up beside him and opens his kit. Inside, between the standard slicer tools, are 3 custom components, narrow data spikes, modified from standard GAR interface equipment, their architecture rewritten at the firmware level over the last 40 minutes in the back of a speeder, while Anakin briefed him on what they needed to do. Walk me through it again, Jesse said under his breath. I want to make sure I'm hitting the right layer. The authorization handshake runs as a verification subroutine in the command frequency stack, Anakin replied, keeping his voice at the same level. Before any contingency order executes, the chip sends a query to the broadcast source asking for a cryptographic signature. If the signature matches the stored key, the order executes. If it doesn't, the chip treats the signal as enemy interference and ignores it. So we're not rewriting the chips. We can't. They're biological hardware at this point, 2 distributed, 2 embedded. We're rewriting the key the broadcast uses to authenticate itself. Corrupt the master key across the relay network, and every Order 66 broadcast Palpatine sends will fail the handshake. The chips will do exactly what they were designed to do when they receive an unauthenticated signal. Jesse turns one of the data spikes over in his fingers. Nothing. Anakin confirmed. Jesse nods once and gets to work. The process is not fast. That's the second problem. Jesse is methodical, not reckless, and methodical takes time. He moves through the partition security architecture the way a bomb disposal technician moves through a detonation circuit, checking each layer before he touches it, mapping the connections between systems, making absolutely certain that what he is about to corrupt is the target and not something adjacent to it. Kix stands at the room's center, positioned to maintain a line of sight to the lieutenant and to the door simultaneously. Rex stands at the door itself. Apo has drifted casually to a position that puts him between the technician's station and the partition panel, which is not a coincidence. 12 minutes pass. First hub cleared, Jesse said quietly. Corruption seeded in the Coruscant primary relay. It'll propagate to the backup frequencies automatically. The relay system is designed to synchronize across all nodes to maintain signal integrity. We're using their redundancy architecture against them. How many hubs total? Rex asked. 7 for full galactic coverage. Core Worlds Relay, the Outer Rim Cluster, the Fleet Command Frequency, and 4 regional backup nodes. Jesse's hands don't pause as he speaks. The good news is they're all linked. Once the primary corruption seeds, I can push it to each node sequentially without re-entering the architecture from scratch. Time? 30 minutes, maybe 35. Anakin checks the chrono on the wall panel. 0341. Work faster, he said. Jesse works faster. The next 20 minutes belong entirely to the sound of the ventilation system and the soft, concentrated activity at the panel. The lieutenant runs 2 routine queries at her station, answers 1 incoming transmission, and does not look up. The building's 40-minute security sweep passes through the corridor outside without stopping. Rex exhales very quietly. At the 17-minute mark, Kix appears at Anakin's shoulder. "There's a secondary architecture I didn't expect," he said. His voice is low and precise, the voice he uses in field triage when the situation has developed a complication, but the complication is still manageable. The biotelemetry partition has a medical monitoring subroutine running parallel to the command frequency stack. It's designed to flag abnormal chip behavior, elevated neural activation, signs of physical removal attempts, and report directly to Kamino. Anakin looks at him. "Nala se." "Almost certainly. It's a watchdog protocol. If a chip shows signs of tampering or unusual stress, including the kind of stress that comes from a failed Order 66 signal, the subroutine generates an alert. Which means when the order fails, Kamino knows within minutes that the chips didn't fire." "Yes." The room is quiet for a moment. "Corrupt the watchdog too," Anakin said. Kix shakes his head. "It's not on Jesse's partition. It's a separate medical subsystem. I'd need direct access to the Kamino relay specifically. Can you spoof it? Make it report normal status regardless of what the chips are doing?" Kix considers this for exactly 4 seconds. "Yes, but it adds time." "How much?" 10 minutes. 15 if the encryption layer is heavier than I'm estimating. Anakin does the math against the chrono. Against the 40-minute security interval. Against Palpatine sitting in his office 6 kilometers away, savoring what he believes is the last quiet hour before his empire begins. "Do it," he said. "Jesse covers the command frequency. You cover the watchdog. We leave here with both problems solved, or we don't leave with anything worth having." Kix pulls a second data spike from his kit and moves to the adjacent panel without another word. Jesse doesn't look up from his work. 23 minutes, he said. "Estimate. Don't hold me to it." "I'll hold you to 19, Anakin replied. Jesse makes a sound that is not quite a laugh. The data core hums around them, alive with the invisible traffic of a galaxy that doesn't yet know its course is being rewritten from a maintenance panel in a sub-basement by 4 soldiers and a Jedi who has decided, very quietly and very completely, that the age of Palpatine ends tonight. The chrono reads 0358. 19 minutes. Jesse's hands move. The Jedi Temple, High Council Chamber, 0600 hours. Dawn arrives on Coruscant the way it always does, not as light exactly, but as a slow, incremental dimming of the city's own luminescence, the billion artificial lights below yielding reluctantly to something older and less controllable. The 5 spires of the temple catch it first. At this hour the council chamber sits at the intersection of darkness and the day's first pale gold, the 12 seats casting long shadows across the circular floor. 6 of the 12 seats are occupied in person. The rest shimmer with the blue-white light of holographic projection, masters present in body elsewhere in the galaxy. Pulled from active theaters by an emergency summons that carried enough weight to make them stop and answer. Yoda's image sits at the far arc, rendered in the slightly flattened quality of long-distance transmission from Kashyyyk, the sounds of a distant battlefield stripped away by the comm filter. Plo Koon appears from Cato Neimoidia, his projection cutting in and out at the edges where the signal crosses a relay. Ki-Adi-Mundi from Megiddo, his transmission the steadiest of the 3. Something in the local relay infrastructure giving him unusual clarity for a forward operating position. The absences made present, the presences taught. Mace Windu sits in his chair with a Bacta wrap sealed across the left side of his ribs, and both hands on the armrests anyway. The posture of a man who has not slept and is not pretending otherwise, who took the edge of a force push into the window frame an hour ago and has filed that information somewhere it won't interfere with the next hour. Shak Ti, recently returned from Camino, which will matter in approximately 4 minutes. Kit Fisto. Aegon Kolar. Ceci Tiin. Yoda's projection, in his chair at the far arc, eyes half closed, the posture that less observant people mistake for drowsiness. Anakin stands at the chamber's center. He has not changed clothes. The evidence of the Chancellor's office is still on him, a faint scorch mark along his left sleeve from redirected Force lightning during the confrontation. A stillness in the way he holds himself that belongs to a man who has been operating under sustained pressure for 4 hours and has not yet permitted himself to feel the weight of it. He had asked for an emergency session. The word emergency from Anakin Skywalker at 05:45 in the morning had been enough. He tells them everything. He doesn't perform it. There is no dramatic architecture, no sequenced revelation designed to manage their reactions. He learned, 4 hours ago in a soundproofed briefing room, that the only delivery mechanism that works when the truth is this large is to simply put it down and let people find their own footing around it. Palpatine, Sidious, the same man, for decades. The war, both sides. The clone chips, Order 66, the timeline in which it would have happened, and the narrow window in which it was prevented. He speaks for 11 minutes without interruption. When he finishes, the chamber is very still. Windu speaks first. "You went to the Republic Military Command mainframe," he said. Not a question. "Without Council authorization." "Yes," Anakin said. "With 3 members of the 501st and your captain." "Yes, and you corrupted the GAR command frequency architecture. And the Camino watchdog relay." Windu's jaw tightens. "Skywalker, with respect. Master Windu," Anakin said. And his voice carries something it didn't use to carry. Not defiance, but a kind of settled certainty that stops the room from the inside out. If I had waited for Council authorization, I would have needed to explain why. Explaining why would have required this conversation. This conversation would have taken time. And in that time, Palpatine would have recognized that I hadn't returned and activated the contingency through a secondary channel. He pauses. The chips are neutralized. That conversation can happen now, because I had it later. Windu holds his gaze. Something shifts in it. Not agreement, not yet, but the particular quality of attention a strategist gives to an argument that has correctly anticipated his objection. Yoda's projection stirs, the holographic image steadies, the transmission quality sharpening for a moment as if by intent. "What you have told us," he said, and his voice carries across the distance from Kashyyyk with the careful, weighted quality it always has, each word placed like a stone across water. "Certain, are you?" "I watched him in that office," Anakin said. "I watched him offer me Padme's life as a transaction. I watched him speak about the Sith rule of 2 as though it were history he'd lived inside." Something moves briefly behind his eyes. "I'm certain," Dooku, Ki-Adi-Mundi said from his Megito transmission, his projection slightly tilted by the angle of the field comm unit. "He told you Dooku was his apprentice. He implied it. The context made it explicit. Dooku wouldn't have died, unless Sidious wanted him to. An apprentice removed to make room for a more powerful one. The more powerful one being me. He lets that sit in the room for exactly as long as it needs to. He's been working toward this for a very long time. Shakti has not spoken. She sits forward in her chair, her Togrutan markings catching the dawn light, her expression carrying something that is not quite guilt and not quite rage, but occupies the space between them. "Camino," she said quietly. Everyone looks at her. When Fives was there, she continued. Nala Se presented his deterioration as progressive psychosis. I observed the clinical assessments. I signed off on the transfer order to Coruscant. Her voice is controlled, but the control is doing visible work. I want you to understand that I reviewed everything they gave me. The documentation was complete. The behavioral evidence was consistent. She stops. And I still signed the order. The chamber absorbs this. "You were deceived," Anakin said. "Yes," she replied. "We were all deceived." I'm pointing out that being deceived required our cooperation. We were given reasons not to look too closely, and we accepted them, because looking closely would have been inconvenient. Her eyes find Anakin's. Fives came to you. He came to me. And you accepted the official account. The words land without cruelty. They are not an accusation. They are a shared inventory of exactly how a conspiracy of this scale survives. Not through perfect concealment, but through the provision of just enough plausible explanation to make skepticism feel like disloyalty. Yes, Anakin said. I did. The silence that follows is one of the more honest silences the council chamber has hosted in recent memory. Windu stands. He moves to the window that faces east, where the dawn is now fully committed, Coruscant's skyline hard-edged and gleaming below the temple's altitude. He stands there for a moment with his hands clasped behind his back, and Anakin watches him work through it. Not the emotional response, Windu doesn't process that way, but the tactical architecture of what this information requires. If the chips are neutralized, Windu said, still facing the window, Palpatine loses his execution mechanism. He can't flip the army. He can't frame us as traitors. He can't manufacture the crisis that grants him emergency authority to declare an empire. He turns. He is right now an old man sitting in an office who believes he is 8 hours from absolute power, with no awareness that the mechanism is gone. Yes, Anakin said. Then we have a window. A narrow one. When he broadcasts Order 66 and nothing happens, he'll understand immediately that the system has been compromised. He'll move to a contingency, personal security, Coruscant Guard, possibly other channels that don't run through the GAR frequency. Anakin pauses. We need to move before he broadcasts, before he knows anything is wrong. Arrest, Kit Fisto said. The word is quiet but carries the full weight of what it would mean. A sitting Chancellor, a Sith Lord, taken into custody by the Jedi Order in front of the Republic that trusts them to protect it, not to police its leadership. Or more, Windu said. Arrest first. Anakin said. Both of them look at him. We need him to answer for it publicly. The war, the chips, the manipulation, the Republic deserves to understand what was done to it. A dead Sith Lord in an office is a loose end. A Chancellor tried before the Senate is a closed account. He meets Windu's eyes. Bring him in alive if we can. His full exposure is the only thing that prevents someone else from stepping into the vacuum and calling us the traitors anyway. Windu regards him for a long moment. You've thought about this carefully, he said. I had 4 hours. Something moves at the corner of Windu's expression that is as close as he typically gets to acknowledgement. He looks toward Yoda's projection. Yoda's holographic image is fully still. He sits with the weight of 900 years of careful decisions, and what crosses his face, even rendered in blue light across 1,000 kilometers of distance, is not resolution. He has never needed to perform resolution. It is the quiet, absolute settling of a being who has just confirmed something he had sensed for a very long time, without being able to name it. A strike team, he said, to the Chancellor's office. Now, we must move. He looks at Anakin, directly, the transmission holding steady for the moment that requires it. Led by you, he said. Earned this. You have. Anakin holds the old master's gaze across the distance. 4 hours ago he stood in a Chancellor's office with a blade at a Sith Lord's throat, and chose not to swing it. Everything that has happened since. Rex, the data core, Jesse's hands moving across a relay panel, Kicks seeding silence into a watchdog protocol. All of it was built on that one decision. He nods once. Then let's finish it, he said. The Jedi Temple. Lower Hangar Bay. 0638 hours. The hangar exists below the temple's public face, below the grand entrance halls and the training salles and the archive levels, in the functional, undecorated infrastructure that keeps an ancient institution operational. Durasteel floor, raw lighting rigs, the smell of fuel and hot metal, and the particular cold that comes from a space too large to heat efficiently. 6 lot gunships sit in 2 rows, their running lights off, their ramps down. They are being loaded. Not with supplies, not with standard deployment gear, with people who understand exactly what this morning is and have chosen, with full information, to be part of it. Anakin moves through the hangar and watches it happen. Rex finds him first. He emerges from the shadow of the nearest gunship's landing strut, already in full Phase 2 armor, the blue markings of the 501st vivid under the hangar lights. Behind him, in a loose column that stretches back to the hangar's access corridor, are 47 troopers. Each one hand-selected. Each one briefed, in the last 30 minutes, by Rex himself, a conversation Anakin was not present for, and did not need to be. Rex stops beside him. Looks at the column. "I told them everything," he said. "The chips. Palpatine. What tonight was for." He pauses. Not one of them stepped out. Anakin looks at the column. 47 men in blue and white, standing in the early morning cold of a hangar bay, having just been informed that the leader of their republic is a Sith Lord who installed a kill switch in their brains. Standing there anyway. The knowledge sits in his chest like something he doesn't have a word for. "They understand what we're walking into?" he asked. "I told them Palpatine has the Coruscant Guard, personal security, and potentially Sith capabilities we haven't fully mapped. Rex's voice is even. I told them this is not a standard arrest operation, and that anyone who wanted reassignment to perimeter security had every right to take it." "And?" Rex looks at him sideways. "Sir, it's the 501st. Anakin doesn't respond to that. He doesn't need to. He turns back to the column and looks at it for one more second. 47 men who know exactly what they are, exactly what was done to them, and who have decided that knowing changes nothing about where they stand. He turns away before the moment can become something he can't carry functionally. "Formation and entry points," he said. "Walk me through it." They move to the mission table that Jesse has set up against the hangar's east wall, a portable holographic projector, running a current architectural schematic of the Senate District Executive Building, pulled from Republic City planning records 40 minutes ago. Jesse pulls up the overlay. The building rotates slowly in blue light. "Primary entry is the Chancellor's private turbolift," he said, indicating the shaft running along the building's east face. It bypasses the main lobby security entirely. The access code is still keyed to Anakin's biometric from his authorized visits. It should work until Palpatine manually revokes it, which he won't have done yet, because revoking it would signal that he's expecting trouble. "Secondary?" Rex asked. "Service corridor, sublevel 2. Access requires Apo's command clearance, same system we used at the data core. Gets us to the building's internal stairwell and up to the executive level from below. Tertiary?" Jesse hesitates. "The outer facade. Maintenance scaffolding on the north face runs to within 8 meters of the executive level windows. Not ideal." "Flag it," Rex said, "in case the first two are compromised." Anakin leans over the table and studies the executive floor schematic. The Chancellor's suite occupies the building's entire upper level, a central office, 2 antechambers, a private residence corridor, and a formal reception room that connects to the Senate balcony. 4 entry points into the suite itself. At least 6 Coruscant Guard positions based on standard protective detail deployment. "The Guard," Anakin said. "They're not Sith. They're soldiers following orders they believe are legitimate. Stun protocols only for the Guard unless they escalate," Rex said. "It isn't a question. Stun only," Anakin confirmed. "Palpatine is the objective. The Guard are not the enemy." "Understood." Windu's voice arrives from behind them before he does. "There's a complication," he said. He crosses the hangar with 3 masters behind him, Agen Kolar, Ceci Tien, Kit Fisto. All of them in field gear, all of them carrying the particular quality of readiness that experienced Jedi Masters carry into situations they've assessed and accepted. Windu stops at the mission table and looks at the schematic. "Intelligence from the Temple Senate Liaison," he said. "Palpatine moved up his morning schedule. He's called an emergency session of the Security Committee for 0800. Anakin checks the chrono. That's 82 minutes. "Yes, he's accelerating his timeline, possibly because you haven't returned to him yet and the absence is registering." Windu's eyes move to Anakin. Or possibly because this was always his schedule and we're reading into it. Either way, if he's in a Security Committee session when we move, we're executing an arrest in front of 12 senior senators and their full security details, which turns a surgical operation into a political event, Kit Fisto said from across the table. His arms are folded, his expression carrying the composed quality of a man who has accepted the morning's parameters and is now only interested in managing them. It was always going to be a political event, Anakin said. The question is whether we control the staging. He looks at the schematic, looks at the window, looks at the four masters across the table. We move at 0720, he said. Before he leaves for the committee, we take the building while he's still in the suite. That's 42 minutes to full deployment, Rex said. He doesn't say that's tight. He says nothing, because he knows Anakin knows. Then we're done planning, Anakin said. The hangar moves. Kix runs a final equipment check down the trooper column, pausing at each man long enough to confirm medical kit integrity and comm unit function. He does it quickly and without ceremony, the practiced efficiency of a medic who knows that preparedness is the only variable he can fully control before a firefight begins. Oppo coordinates the gunship loading with the temple's hangar chief, a civilian logistics officer who has been told this is a high-priority security deployment and nothing more. She doesn't ask for more. She moves her ground crew to the perimeter and lets the soldiers work. Jesse breaks down the mission table and transfers the building schematic to each trooper's helmet display. He does it in under 4 minutes. Anakin watches him work and thinks, not for the first time, that Jesse's particular skills have been consistently underutilized by a military command structure that doesn't fully understand what it has. He will think about that later. There is a great deal to think about later. Right now Rex is beside him, and the gunships are ready, and the four masters are moving into position, and the hangar bay smells of fuel, and the particular cold electricity of a morning that is going to change something irreversible. Last chance for second thoughts, Rex said. His tone makes clear that this is not a serious offer. I had my second thoughts 4 hours ago in an elevator, Anakin replied. I'm on sixth thoughts now. Sixth thoughts are much calmer. Rex makes the same sound he made in the data core. Not quite a laugh, but adjacent to one. He moves to the lead gunship and takes the entry ramp in 2 steps. Anakin follows. The masters board in silence. Agan Kolar takes the forward position without being asked. Sissy Tien runs a quiet last check of his comms. Kit Fisto settles into his seat with his hands on his knees, and the particular composed expression of a man who has accepted the morning's parameters completely, and made his peace with them. Windu is last. He stops at the top of the ramp and looks back at the hangar, the temple above, the dawn light filtering through the bay doors, the city beyond. Whatever he finds in that look, he keeps to himself. He steps inside. The ramp closes. 47 troopers. 4 masters. 1 general who lowered his blade 8 hours ago and has been building toward this moment in every minute since. The gunship lifts. Through the viewport the Jedi Temple falls away below them, and Coruscant's morning skyline opens up ahead. Vast. Luminous. Entirely unaware that in 41 minutes, the longest deception in Republic history is going to end in a room near the top of a building currently visible on the horizon. Anakin watches it come closer. He doesn't look away. The Chancellor's private suite. Republic Executive Building, 0714 hours. Palpatine stands at the window. He does this every morning, has done it for 13 years, through every phase of the war he engineered and the peace he is about to end. The window faces west, away from the dawn, so what he sees is Coruscant still wrapped in its own artificial night, the city lights of a trillion souls burning below him, in patterns that have always reminded him, privately, of a map of something he owns. In 6 hours, he will own it explicitly. He turns from the window and moves to his desk. The surface is clear except for a single datapad displaying the Order 66 contingency interface, a clean, minimal screen, the kind of design that results when the only function required is the pressing of one key. He has looked at this screen many times over the years. Rehearsed the moment. Let himself inhabit it fully in the privacy of his own mind. He does not press it yet. There is sequence to honor. Grievous first. The staged death on Utapau will give the Senate the pretext for emergency session, the emotional context that makes the Chancellor's assumption of wartime authority feel like necessity rather than seizure. Then the Jedi, neutralized simultaneously across every theater by the army they have marched beside for 3 years. Then the Senate, called into emergency session to receive the news that the Jedi Order attempted a coup, that the Chancellor alone stood against them, that only he can be trusted to lead the Republic through what comes next. He has run this sequence 10,000 times. It has never failed in any version he has modeled. He picks up the datapad. He presses the key. In the GAR command frequency stack, buried beneath 3 layers of encryption and 2 redundant verification protocols, a signal departs. It travels at the speed of light through the Republic HoloNet relay system, bouncing from spire to spire across Coruscant's Senate district, reaching for the network of communications satellites that will carry it to every fleet, every garrison, every forward operating base in the galaxy. At the first relay junction, it presents its cryptographic authorization signature for verification. The verification subroutine checks the signature against the stored master key. The master key has been corrupted at the source level, propagated across all 7 relay nodes, confirmed and reconfirmed through every redundant backup frequency in the GAR command architecture by a soldier working in a sub-basement data core 6 hours ago who did not look up from his work until he was done. The signature does not match. The subroutine classifies the signal as unauthenticated. The signal dies. In the antechamber outside the Chancellor's suite, Commander Fox stands at his post with the particular rigid attention of a guardsman who has spent so many years performing vigilance that it has become indistinguishable from the genuine article. His comlink activates. A voice from the GAR command frequency. His frequency. The one reserved for direct orders from the highest level of Republic military command. He listens. Then he keys his response and delivers the 4 words that will, though he does not know it yet, mark the precise moment an empire failed to be born. Order unverified, Chancellor. Palpatine does not move. He stands behind his desk with the datapad in his hand. And the stillness that comes over him in the 5 seconds following those 4 words is not the stillness of calm. It is the stillness of a system encountering an input it has no category for. 1,000 years of Sith planning, decades of his own meticulous preparation, a 13-year war conducted with the precision of a surgical instrument. None of it has ever produced a result that required this particular response. He presses the key again. The comlink remains silent for 8 seconds. Then Fox's voice returns, carrying the controlled bewilderment of a soldier reporting an instrument malfunction he doesn't understand. Chancellor, the order is returning unverified on all frequencies. Command architecture is showing authentication failure across primary and backup relay both. We're not receiving confirmation from any GAR unit. Palpatine sets the datapad down on the desk. He sets it down carefully, with the precise, deliberate motion of a man managing the gap between what he is feeling and what he is permitting his body to express. His face, in the privacy of his own office, does something it has not done in a very long time. It shows him afraid. Not the performed fear that has served him so well in front of senators and apprentices, the theatrical vulnerability that makes powerful men feel powerful by comparison. This is the other thing. The thing underneath the performance that he has not visited in so long he had almost convinced himself it was gone. He is alone in a room and his army has not moved, and something has gone catastrophically, irreversibly wrong. His mind reaches for the shape of it. The verification key. Someone accessed the relay architecture and corrupted the master key at the source level. Not a technical failure. Technical failures don't propagate uniformly across all 7 relay nodes simultaneously. This was deliberate. This was skilled. The elevator. He crosses to his desk and pulls up the building's internal security feed. The private turbolift, the one keyed to authorized personal visitors, is active. Moving upward, he checks the access log. Skywalker, Anakin, biometric confirmation. 0713, the lift began moving 4 minutes ago. Palpatine straightens. The fear does not leave his face. But something moves through it, not replacing it but layering over it, the way weather systems move across each other, the old cold fury that has sustained him through every setback, every near exposure. Every moment across decades of careful work, when something failed to go as planned, and he adapted, and continued, and won. He is the most dangerous being in this room. He reminds himself of this with the specific, deliberate intention of a man who needs the reminder to be true. He moves to the center of the room. His hands find the armrests of the Chancellor's chair, and then release them. A decision made in under a second, not sitting, not stationary, not a target positioned behind furniture. He stands in the open. The door will open in approximately 40 seconds. He thinks of everything he has, the Coruscant Guard in the antechamber, his own capabilities which no Jedi alive has ever seen the full measure of, the darkness, which has never once abandoned him in decades of drawing on it. He thinks of Skywalker, the boy who was supposed to be standing in this office 8 hours ago, shaken and grieving and ready to be molded, delivering himself willingly into the role that had been prepared for him since Tatooine. Instead, the boy went somewhere and did something and cut the wire of the largest weapon ever constructed, which means the boy is not what Palpatine believed him to be. The boy is something else. Something that has been in this office, performing grief and confusion with sufficient fidelity to deceive a Sith Lord who has spent decades reading people as casually as most beings read words on a page. The lift reaches the top floor. Palpatine hears the doors open in the outer corridor. Hears the sound of boots, not one set, not Skywalker alone. He hears the Coruscant Guard begin to respond. He hears the specific, flat sound of stun blasts discharging, and then the sound of bodies hitting the floor, efficiently and without prolonged exchange. It takes 11 seconds. Then silence. Then the door to the Chancellor's suite opens. Windu enters first, blade ignited, the purple light filling the room in a way that transforms it. The familiar office. The desk. The long window overlooking the city, all of it suddenly a stage for something that was always going to happen here. In some version of this morning, in some timeline where someone was paying enough attention. Behind Windu, 3 masters. Behind them, Anakin. Palpatine looks at Anakin across the room. Anakin looks back. There is no grief in his face. No confusion, no trace of the devastated young man who stood in this office 8 hours ago, blade hovering and hands shaking. What is there instead is the specific, settled quality of a person who made a decision in full knowledge of its cost, and has been living inside that decision ever since, and has found it, not comfortable, not painless, but right. Palpatine has read 10,000 faces across decades of manipulation. He has never, in all of that time, seen this particular thing looking back at him. It costs him something to hold the gaze. He holds it anyway. Skywalker, he said. His voice carries the full register of the character, warm, paternal, the tone of a man wounded by betrayal. It's over, Anakin said. Palpatine's expression shifts. The warmth goes. Underneath it, finally, is the face that has been there all along. It has, he said, very quietly, barely begun. The darkness in the room bends toward him. The Chancellor's suite. 0717 hours. The darkness bends toward him, and the room changes. It is not a metaphor. The Force, drawn by a being who has spent decades learning to weaponize it, responds to Palpatine's intent the way a tide responds to a moon, not dramatically, not with visible display, but with a fundamental shift in the quality of the air, the light, the way sound moves. The morning gold coming through the window dims by 0.5 degree. The temperature drops without any mechanical explanation. The 4 masters feel it simultaneously. Aegon Kolar's blade rises to guard position. Sissy Teen steps left, opening the geometry of the room. Kit Fisto moves right, putting furniture between himself and the desk without breaking his line of sight to Palpatine. 3 masters, years of high-level combat experience between them, repositioning with the automatic precision of beings who have survived long enough to make threat recognition a reflex. Windu doesn't move. His blade holds its position, point down and slightly forward, the Va-Pod opening stance that most Jedi Masters consider too dangerous to use, and that Windu spent decades perfecting precisely because of that. Anakin stands at the room's center. He watches Palpatine's hands. "You should have struck when you had the chance," Palpatine said. His voice has shed the last remnant of the Chancellor's register entirely. What remains is the voice underneath, the one Anakin heard for the first time 8 hours ago. Old and deliberate and utterly without warmth. Last night. In this room. The blade at my throat and your anger at your disposal. He tilts his head. A precise, reptilian movement. You had everything you needed. I had a blade, Anakin said. That's not everything. No, Palpatine replied. I suppose for you it never was. He moves. Not toward the Jedi, laterally, one smooth step to the right, putting the desk between himself and Windu's position. His robes shift. From within their folds, with a speed that belongs to a body that has spent decades refining force-augmented movement. Two things happen simultaneously. The lightsaber appears in his right hand. The force pushes from his left. Not a targeted blast, but a wave, horizontal and low, sweeping across the floor with enough force to move furniture and destabilize footing, before any blade can intercept it. Kit Fisto vaults it. Sissy Tian sidesteps right and loses a half-second of position. Aegon Kolar catches the edge of it and staggers one step before recovering. Windu cuts through the energy with his blade, grounding the wave, and advances. The red blade ignites. What follows is not a duel in any classical sense of the word. Palpatine fights the way he has always done everything, without the constraints that aesthetics or tradition impose on beings who care about either. There is no form, no lineage, no recognizable school in the way he moves. There is only the product of 1,000 years of Sith refinement, distilled through decades of his own practice, emerging as something that looks less like combat technique and more like controlled violence, finding the most efficient path between one moment and the next. He crosses the distance to Aegon Kolar in 2 steps. Kolar's blade comes up in Sorasu, the defensive form technically perfect, designed to neutralize the speed advantage of an aggressive attacker, by presenting a wall of blade coverage that requires the attacker to either slow down or find an angle that doesn't exist. Palpatine finds the angle. It is not a gap in the technique. It is a gap in Kolar's anticipation, the half-second delay between recognizing a strike's trajectory and committing to the counter, a delay so small that it is effectively unmeasurable in any training environment, that only becomes fatal against an opponent fast enough to live inside it. The red blade moves twice. Kolar goes down. Sissy Tian is already moving, not to Kolar. There is no longer anything to move to, but into engagement, his blade a blue arc driving at Palpatine's exposed right side. Palpatine redirects without turning fully. A parry that becomes a bind that becomes a push with the offhand that drives Tian backward into the antechamber doorframe with enough force to crack the casing. Tian hits the ground and doesn't immediately rise. 11 seconds. 2 masters. Kit Fisto engages from the left, pressing hard, his Shicho aggressive enough to demand full attention. It is the oldest form, designed for multiple opponents, wide and unpredictable. Palpatine gives ground. 1 step, 2. The desk between them now. His yellow eyes track Fisto and Windu simultaneously, the precise multi-target attention of a being who has survived by never fixating on what's directly in front of him. He is smiling. Not the Chancellor's smile. The other one. You, he said, and his attention moves to Anakin with the focused quality of something predatory selecting a target, have not moved. No, Anakin said. Afraid? Thinking. He has been thinking since the door opened. Not about the combat geometry. Rex and 12 troopers hold the corridor, stun protocols only, the building perimeter locked by the remaining 501st 4 floors below. Windu and Fisto are the best blade combatants on the Council and they are pressing. The room's dynamics are not favorable, but they are not catastrophic. What he is thinking about is the look on Palpatine's face when Kolar went down. Satisfaction. Clean and practiced and completely without effect. Not bloodlust, not rage, the thing that lives on the other side of those. The flat professional recognition of a problem solved. Palpatine did not react to killing a Jedi Master like a being responding to a crisis. He reacted like a craftsman completing a step in a familiar process. He has done this before. Many times. The Jedi who have disappeared across the decades of the war, the Masters whose deaths were attributed to separatist action, Anakin does not have a number, and doesn't need one. He needs to move. Fisto presses Palpatine into the corner near the window, Windu flanking left. The first genuine convergence of the engagement. Two blades at angles that remove the retreat options one by one. Palpatine parries the Fisto attack, redirects it, uses the redirected momentum to spin into Windu's angle and Fisto goes down, not dead. The blade catches his shoulder and his collarbone, and he hits the floor hard, breathing, his blade gone. His right arm not responding to instructions. Windu absorbs this without changing his stance. The purple blade doesn't waver. Palpatine looks at him across 2 meters of office floor. Mace Windu, he said. The name carries something that is not respect, but is its dark mirror, the acknowledgement of the only Jedi he has ever considered a genuine problem. I have been waiting for this since Geonosis. Funny, Windu said. I've been waiting since before that. He attacks. Vapad in full expression is a weapon that most Jedi find philosophically untenable, because it functions by channeling the opponent's own darkness back against them. The more aggressive the attacker, the more fuel the form has to work with, against a cornered Sith Lord operating at full capacity. It is either the precisely correct tool or a catastrophic miscalculation, and the difference between those two outcomes is whether the wielder can sustain the channel without being consumed by what flows through it. Windu can. The engagement compresses into the northeast corner of the room, fast, punishing, the red and purple blades building an exchange rate that empties the surrounding space of anything except itself. Palpatine is not retreating. He is choosing the corner, choosing the compression, eliminating angles deliberately. The tactic of a being who knows that controlling the geometry of a fight matters more than winning any individual exchange within it. Anakin reads this. Corner chosen. Space compressed. Windu occupied fully. Tin down, Kolar down, Fisto down and breathing. And Palpatine's left hand free. He moves. 3 steps across the room, the Force clearing his path, not aggressively, not with display. Just the practiced application of enough kinetic suggestion to put him where he needs to be in the next 2 seconds. His blade ignites. Blue light joins purple across Palpatine's face, and for the first time since the door opened, Palpatine's expression does something other than perform absolute confidence. He reassesses. He meets Windu on one side and Anakin on the other, and in the specific quality of the half-second before the next exchange begins, he is for the first time in a very long time, genuinely uncertain how this ends. He has been in this room before in 10,000 models and variations. He has never been in this room with both of them. "You believe you've won," he said. His voice carries the full weight of a being, choosing, in real time, to make his last stand as expensive as possible. "You have only forced my hand." The darkness in the room gathers itself. And Darth Sidious, Lord of the Sith, last of his line, attacks the Chancellor's suite. 0724 hours. The Force lightning comes first. It always does with Sidious, not as a last resort, not as desperation, but as punctuation. An opening statement delivered in the language he has always been most fluent in. Both hands, simultaneously, the full measure of decades of refinement channeled through fingers that have spent years learning exactly how much it takes to kill a Jedi Master, and exactly how much more it takes to make killing them look effortless. It fills the room. Windu catches it on his blade. The purple crystal screams with the load, a sound like metal tearing. The saber's housing running hot in his grip, but the blade holds, Vapad's mechanism turning the energy back against itself, and Windu advances through it 1 step at a time. His boots finding the floor with the absolute, planted certainty of a man who has decided he will not be moved. Anakin takes the right flank. He doesn't try to catch the lightning. He moves through the space beside it, the gap between Sidious's 2-handed discharge and the wall, a corridor of relatively clear air 3 centimeters wide, and he covers the distance between himself and Sidious in the time it takes Sidious to register that the left side of his geometry has collapsed. The red blade comes around to meet him. Anakin parries it high, rolls the bind low, drives an elbow into Sidious's guard to break his stance. Not a saber technique, a soldier's move. The kind that doesn't exist in any Jedi training manual, because Jedi training manuals are built on the assumption that the person holding the blade has a blade, and that is sufficient. Sidious stumbles one step. One step is enough. Windu closes the distance from the left, and the engagement becomes something with no name in the classical taxonomy of Jedi combat. Not a duel, not a skirmish, not a formal contest of forms, but a living geometry that neither side fully controls. 3 beings and 3 blades, and the force moving between them like weather. Sidious adapts. This is the thing about him that the histories, if anyone survives to write them honestly, will have to reckon with. He does not have good days and bad days. He does not have moments of doubt or hesitation, or the small mechanical failures that accumulate in every other combatant under sustained pressure. What he has is decades of refinement that have progressively eliminated every response except the optimal one, and what that produces in practice is an opponent who, when the initial strategy fails, simply arrives at the correct counter before the attacker has finished their attack. He stops trying to create separation. Instead, he compresses, drawing them both in, making the engagement so close that the reach advantage of 2 opponents stops functioning, that the angles which should disadvantage him stop existing because the space required for those angles has been removed. He fights from inside the arc of their blades, too close for full swings, redirecting momentum rather than generating it. The red blade moving in tight, precise vectors that require Windu and Anakin to be continuously aware of each other's position or risk driving each other onto his point. It is extraordinary, and it is not enough. Because Anakin is not fighting like a Jedi, he is fighting like a man who has already decided what this is about, and has nothing left to be afraid of. The fear has been the problem his whole life, not cowardice, never that, but the specific fear that lives in the gap between what you have and what you might lose. The fear that has driven every desperate choice, every compromised decision, every moment when the darkness looked like the only door with a light behind it. Padme's face. His children, not yet born, not yet named, already more real to him than anything in this room, except the blade in his hand. Rex, in a briefing room 2 hours ago, staring at a medical scanner reading, sitting with the knowledge of what was inside his skull, and deciding in silence that it changed nothing about where he stood. Fives dying on a Coruscant street with the truth in his hands, and no one left to give it to. The fear is gone. What replaces it is not rage. Rage is just fear with a direction. What replaces it is something he doesn't have a name for, something that has been underneath all the fear all along, waiting for the fear to exhaust itself and step aside. It feels. He thinks distantly, like the Force is supposed to feel, like the river the Masters always described in language he could never quite access. He stops thinking about it and lets it move him. Sidious drives a force push between them, enormous, targeted, the kind that doesn't ask your cooperation before it relocates you across a room. Windu goes left, hitting the wall beside the shattered window frame and losing his footing. Anakin goes right, the force catching him mid-stumble and redirecting him upward, his feet finding the desk's surface, the added height changing his angle entirely. Sidious looks up at him. The lightning comes again. Full discharge, both hands, everything he has. The opening statement become the final argument. Anakin catches it on his blade and walks forward through it. Step, step, step. The lightning pours across his blade and up his arms, and the force moves it. Not perfectly, not painlessly. It costs him. Each step costs him. The energy looking for purchase in his nervous system and finding the current of the living force running counter to it. The two things occupying the same space and neither fully yielding. His teeth are set. His eyes are open. His face is not the face of a man suppressing pain. It is the face of a man who has decided pain is not the relevant variable. He reaches the end of the lightning's range. His blade finds Sidious's guard. The discharge stops. Sidious redirects to defense, the red blade moving fast, faster than it has moved in the last 7 minutes. The first real indication that something in his calculation has shifted, that what is in front of him has stopped resembling what he modeled. Windu is back on his feet. They press from both sides, and Sidious is, for the first time in this engagement, purely reactive. He is still extraordinary. Reactive does not mean finished, does not mean diminished, does not mean the danger has left the room. The red blade finds Kit Fisto's dropped saber with a force pull, and suddenly there are one in each hand. Jar-Kai, the dual-blade technique that exists precisely to address the problem of two-sided pressure. And for 30 seconds the room becomes the most dangerous it has been since the lightning. 4 blades in a space designed for furniture and political theater. Windu takes a cut across his left forearm. He doesn't stop. Anakin takes the second saber's guard on his own blade, and drives it down and to the left and strips it. Not a Jedi technique. A mechanic's technique. The leverage calculation of a man who spent his childhood taking things apart and understanding exactly how they held together. The second saber hits the floor. 1 blade now. Sidious fighting one-handed, the geometry collapsed, both of them inside his guard simultaneously. He doesn't stop. He will not stop. This is the thing Anakin has understood since the beginning. Palpatine will fight until he physically cannot, because he has no category for surrender, has spent decades ensuring he would never need one. So Anakin doesn't give him the choice. A force push, not at Sidious, but at the floor beneath him, the precise application of kinetic force to a specific surface that takes the foundation away rather than striking the man. Sidious loses his footing. Half a second, no more. Windu's blade finds his wrist, the red saber drops. Sidious hits his knees on the Chancellor's office floor, unarmed, both of them standing over him in the morning light coming through the ruined window, and the room goes quiet for the first time since 0717. He kneels there, breathing, his true face fully visible, the corruption that has been there all along. The physical record of what the dark side does to a human body when it is invited completely inside and given everything it asks for. He looks up at Anakin. "You could have had everything," he said. His voice is entirely steady. The performance of composure from a being who has lost every material advantage and retained only this. Anakin looks down at him. "I already do," he said. The room breathes. Outside the shattered window, Coruscant goes about its morning, 1,000,000,000,000 lives moving through their ordinary hours, none of them aware that the war that has consumed 3 years and tens of millions of lives has just, in a room on an upper floor of a building in the Senate district, run out of architect. Windu looks at Anakin across the kneeling figure between them. Anakin takes 1 step back. It is not agreement, and it is not absence. It is the deliberate geometry of a man who has made an argument and is now standing aside to let the room determine whether it held. He thinks of everything he said in the council chamber 2 hours ago. A dead Sith Lord in an office is a loose end. He believed it when he said it. He believes it now, in the part of himself that runs cool and analytical under any temperature of circumstance. And then Palpatine speaks. He looks at Anakin and he finds the place he has always found, the precise coordinates of the wound he has been pressing for months, and he uses the last tool in the case. "She is still in danger," he said. His voice drops to something almost private. "The visions don't lie. Anakin, you know this. Whatever I am, whatever you've decided I've done, the knowledge of how to prevent what you saw is real. It exists. I possess it." A pause waited with the full measure of a century's patience. "Kill me, and it dies with me. Let me live, under any conditions you choose, any containment, any trial, and I will give you everything. Every technique, every secret of the dark side that touches life and death." His yellow eyes find the place in Anakin's face where the fear used to live. "Save her. You can still save her." The room is very quiet. Anakin stands with this for the full measure of what it costs. Because it is not nothing. That is the truth he will not insult by pretending otherwise. It has never been nothing. The vision of Padme and the darkness around it is the central fact of the last 3 years of his life. The wound that Palpatine has been pressing for months, with the patience of a man who knew exactly where it was and what it required. He stands with it. He thinks of Padme in the early morning of their apartment on Coruscant, before the war news comes, before the Senate session. In the hour when she is simply herself, and the galaxy hasn't arrived yet to make demands of her. The specific quality of that hour. The way it feels like something worth the cost of everything that surrounds it. He thinks of Rex's face in the briefing room, 2 hours ago. sitting across a table with the knowledge of what was in his skull, and deciding it changed nothing about where he stood. He thinks of Fives. "I already saved her," he said. His voice is quiet and entirely final. "I saved my brothers. I'm going to go home to my family and watch my children grow up in a republic that knows what it almost became." He holds Palpatine's gaze with no heat in it, no anger, nothing that could be called darkness in any honest inventory of what he is feeling. "You have nothing left to offer me." Palpatine looks at him for a long moment. Whatever he finds, he keeps it behind his face. He gives Anakin nothing, not concession, not rage, not the satisfaction of a dramatic response to the loss of his last tool. He simply closes his eyes and waits. Windu looks at Anakin. Anakin steps back. One step, clean and deliberate, out of the immediate space. Not leaving, not looking away, simply making clear, with the geometry of his own body, what belongs to him and what belongs to the 30 years of argument Palpatine tried to weaponize and failed. He thinks, in the half-second before Windu moves, that the public trial argument was right, and is still right, and that a man who can deploy that tool from his knees, unarmed, defeated, on the floor of his own office, is not a man who will survive a trial without burning down everything around him in the attempt. He thinks of Padme in the Senate chamber. He thinks of what Palpatine's voice could do to that room with 6 months of proceedings and the full machinery of his political life as a stage. He thinks of Fives, who died because the official account was plausible enough and the truth was inconvenient enough and nobody in authority wanted badly enough to look. He steps back. Windu looks down at the kneeling figure. "This is for the Republic," he said. His voice carries no performance, no ceremony, no grandiosity. It is the voice of a man completing something that should have been simpler and wasn't. And for every Jedi you would have destroyed. He doesn't hesitate. The purple blade moves once. The room goes still. Outside the window, Coruscant continues, ships crossing the skyline, the Senate District's morning light falling across towers and walkways, and the ordinary surfaces of a civilization that doesn't yet know the thing it was afraid of has ended. 1 trillion lives moving through their hours. Anakin stands in the silence of the Chancellor's office. What used to be the Chancellor's office. What is now just a room with broken windows and the debris of decades of careful architecture scattered across its floor. He extinguishes his blade. The blue light goes out. He breathes once, fully, the kind of breath that has been waiting since the moment he lowered his saber in this same room 8 hours ago and started walking toward this one. Rex's voice comes through the comlink, steady as always. "General, building is secure. Your orders?" Anakin looks at the window, at the skyline, at the light. "Get me a line to the Senate," he said. "We have a great deal to tell them. The Galactic Senate Chamber. 1100 hours. The chamber holds 10,000 beings, and it is full. Not the managed fullness of a scheduled session, the organic, pressurized fullness of a body that has received an emergency summons and arrived still pulling on its formal robes, still reading the preliminary dispatch on handheld datapads, still trying to construct a framework adequate to what the words on those datapads are describing. Every pod is occupied. The ambient noise is not the disciplined murmur of Senate procedure, but something raw, 10,000 voices running beneath the formal architecture of the space, like a current beneath ice. At the central podium, Bail Organa stands. He was asked to present the preliminary findings because Anakin couldn't, not yet. Not while the Senate's institutional reflex toward the Jedi Order is still calibrating to the morning's events. Not while the word coup is still circulating in the lower frequencies of the room's anxiety before the full truth has had time to displace it. Organa is not a man who performs well under pressure. He performs correctly under pressure, which is a different and more useful thing. His voice is level. His documentation is complete. He lays it down the way Anakin laid it down for the Council 6 hours ago, without architecture, without sequencing designed to manage the reaction, simply the full weight of it placed in front of 10,000 beings and allowed to land. The clone chips, the war's manufactured origins, the identity of Darth Sidious and the identity of Chancellor Palpatine, and the fact that these are the same identity. He speaks for 22 minutes. When he finishes, the chamber is the quietest it has been in living memory. Anakin speaks for 7 minutes. He does not use the podium. He stands on the floor of the chamber, in the open space at its center, in the same clothes he has been wearing since the previous night, and he tells them what he did and why and in what order. The data core, the corrupted verification key, the strike team, the arrest that became something else when 2 masters went down and the options compressed. He does not apologize for any of it. An apology would be a performance, and the chamber has had enough performances. He tells them about Fives. He tells them about a clone trooper who found the truth inside the architecture of the war and carried it alone until it killed him, who died on a Coruscant street with the warning incomplete, whose name was buried in a medical report that called him unstable and let the Republic move on. He says the name clearly, once, into the silence of 10,000 beings. The chamber does not erupt, it absorbs. The specific collective absorption of a body reckoning with the distance between what it believed and what was true, and beginning, in real time, the long work of closing that distance. When he steps back from the center of the floor, Bail Organa nods at him once. Anakin nods back. That is enough. The ceasefire takes 4 hours to reach every active theater. Not because the Separatist leadership is reluctant. The news of Sidious's death and exposure reaches the Separatist Council on Mustafar within 90 minutes of the Senate address, and the Council's response is the response of beings who have just discovered that the war they believed they were fighting on principle was a managed conflict engineered from its origin point by the man who also controlled the side they were fighting against. Most of them surrender before the day ends. 2 faction leaders flee into the Outer Rim. The droid armies, lacking updated command instructions, simply stop. The Clone Wars end not with a treaty or a surrender ceremony, but with a gradual, theater-by-theater cessation, like a fire running out of fuel in stages, first here, then there. Then, the last distant ember going dark in a forward operating base on a moon that most of the Senate couldn't find on a star chart. Millions dead. 3 years. A war that was built to produce exactly one outcome and produced instead this. 10,000 senators sitting in a chamber trying to understand what they had been inside of, and a galaxy that is, for the first time in 3 years, not actively consuming itself. It is not a clean ending. Clean endings are for beings who haven't been paying attention. It is an ending. The Jedi Temple. The Council Chamber. 3 days later. The session is brief. Yoda speaks first, which is protocol, and what he says is not long. He acknowledges what was done. He names each member of the strike team. He says Fives' name as clearly as Anakin said it in the Senate chamber, with the specific weight of a being who has 9 centuries of carried names to draw on, and understands exactly what it means to add one more. Then, Mace Windu stands. The Council owes you a debt it can never fully repay, he said. He is looking at Anakin and not performing the look, not constructing it for the room's benefit, simply delivering it at the person it belongs to. We owe Rex and his men the same. A pause. We were wrong about a great many things. The record should reflect that we know it. Anakin stands at the chamber center where he has stood many times before, in many different registers of the relationship between himself and this room. The anger, the hunger for recognition, the resentment that lived for years in the gap between what he was told he was and what he was told he could become. None of that is in him today. The Council is offering you the rank of Master, Windu continued. Full acknowledgement, recorded and permanent. The seat is yours if you want it. Anakin is quiet for a moment. I'm honored, he said, and means it, without the old complicated understructure of need beneath it, just the clean fact of it. I want to accept the rank. Windu nods. The seat, Anakin continues, I need to decline. No one in the room looks surprised. Yoda's eyes hold a quality that is not quite a smile but occupies the same space. I'm going to Naboo, Anakin said. I'm going to be with my wife. I'm going to be there when our children are born. He looks at Windu. I am done being a Jedi who loves people in secret. The Order can decide what it wants to do with that. Windu holds his gaze. The Order, he said, after a moment, is deciding that it should have made room for that a long time ago. Yoda makes a sound that is, unmistakably, a small laugh. Naboo. Lake Country. Varikino. 14 days later. The light here is different from Coruscant light. It arrives without mediation, no atmospheric processors, no reflection off 10 million kilometers of urban surface, no competition from artificial sources. It simply comes from the sun, and finds the water, and turns everything it touches a particular shade of gold that Anakin has thought about. In the gaps between everything else, for years. He sits on the balcony of the lake house in the early morning, in the quiet before the household wakes, with his boots off and his feet on the railing and his eyes on the water. Inside, Padme sleeps. The pregnancy has reached the stage where sleep is hard won, and she defends it with the focused determination she brings to everything worth protecting. And he is not going to be the thing that ends it. He sits with the morning. He thinks about Rex, who 3 days ago appeared before a joint session of the Senate Military Oversight Committee, and gave testimony for 4 hours about the inhibitor chip program, the cover-up of Tup's malfunction, and the deliberate suppression of Fives' investigation. Rex gave this testimony in full armor, with his helmet under his arm, and did not look at his notes once. The chip removal program began the following morning. Voluntary, fully resourced, available to every clone in the GAR. Rex signed up first. He thinks about Jesse, who has apparently been offered a position in the New Republic Intelligence Technical Division, and has not yet decided whether to take it. And about Kix, who has been consulting with the Camino Medical Records team to establish the full scope of the chip's neural integration and what removal requires. And about Oppo, who took 2 days of leave and then reported back to barracks because, as he told Rex, he didn't know what else to do with himself yet, and Rex said that was fine, they'd figure it out. They will figure it out. The door behind him opens. He hears it and doesn't turn. He knows her footstep, has known it for years, has measured the specific sound of it moving toward him against the accumulated count of all the times it moved away. Padme sits beside him. She moves carefully, the adjustment of a body that is carrying more than one life and is aware of it at every moment. She puts her feet up on the railing beside his. Her shoulder finds his shoulder. They sit with the water. The Senate dispatch came, she said eventually. I saw it. They're calling you the savior of the Republic. He considers this. Rex saved the Republic, he said. Jesse and Kix and Appo saved the Republic. Fives saved it first, before any of us were paying attention. He pauses. I just finished what he started. Padme is quiet for a moment. He'd be glad to know it. I know, Anakin said. I'm going to make sure everyone else does too. The sun moves across the water. Somewhere inside the lake house, something shifts, a sound too small to name, the house settling into its mourning. They don't move. In the end, the galaxy was saved not by a prophecy or a destined duel, but by a young man who chose to think instead of strike, who lowered a blade in a dark office and built everything that followed from that single act of restraint. One held breath. One clear decision. One choice not to let fear be the thing that moved his hands. The water catches the light. Anakin breathes. He is exactly where he is supposed to be. Let us know what you'd like to see next. The end.